The identity of the Dobbs decision leaker, the person who leaked the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, and in a sense, the full opinion, the leading opinion written by Justice Alito, was out before it was out. And but that person's identity is to this date unknown. It seems very odd, not just to me, but to many other people, because it's a small circle of people who would have not only known the outcome, but had actual access to the decision. We're talking about the Supreme Court, 9 people. We're talking about their clerks. That's probably, 5 or 6 per justice. So 45 people. Maybe there was some other administrative staff, but maybe 75, 80, I don't know, 100 people. How hard can it be to figure out who the leaker was? It can't be that hard. And yet there's been this supposed investigation, now conducted not by the FBI, conducted by the marshal of the court. It's done really by doing interviews with people. I'm not even sure if these people have the competence to be able to do this kind of detective work. But they evidently interviewed a bunch of people. They did a bunch of affidavits. They put people under oath. They warned them that if they lie, they can be subjected to a prosecution for making false statements. But supposedly they came up with nothing. In fact, they said that that the marshal, her name is Gail Curley, quote, has to date been unable to identify a person responsible by a preponderance of the evidence. So you don't need beyond a reasonable doubt, but you need more evidence pointing to it than pointing to someone else or away from it. And yet, Supreme Court Justice Alito recently said in an interview, he goes, basically, I have a pretty good idea. Quote, I personally have a pretty good idea who is responsible, but that's different from the level of proof needed to name somebody. So Alito is basically saying, I know who it was. Now, I can't prove it definitively, so I'm not going to say the name. But he does say this. He says that the person who did it, quote, it was part of an effort to prevent the Dobbs draft from becoming the decision of the court, and that's how it was used for those 6 weeks by people on the outside as part of the campaign to try to intimidate the court. So this is the key point here. I mean, obviously, we'd like to know the identity of the person. We'd like to have that person be held responsible. Just think about it. You've got somebody, most likely a Supreme Court clerk. Now, there were some early reports that it might have been departing Justice Breyer's clerk. And I've even seen pictures of the supposed perpetrator. But whether it was that guy or some other guy, this is a guy who's got a very important Supreme Court imprimatur. I clerked for a Supreme Court justice who generally goes into a high position in a leading law firm. And this is someone flagrantly violating the basic rules of legal ethics. I mean, here's someone who, if lawyers should be trusted to do anything, it is to respect the procedures of the law, respect the Supreme Court as the highest institution charged with carrying out and interpreting the law, and maintain confidentiality, which is a part of the routine business of law. This is under wraps. This is under seal. You can't talk about this. Don't divulge that. Attorney-client privilege, and so on and so on. So this alone, the idea that we're putting someone out there who is not only not being held accountable, but guess what? I wouldn't be surprised if after the statute of limitations is over, this person comes out and goes, it was me, ha ha ha, this is fantastic. And the person is then praised by the left for being heroic and for taking all the risk and for basically putting themselves on the line. So this is a transformation in which you take something that you did that is administratively bad, that is ethically horrible, and then you claim that it's some sort of a credential or a kind of insignia of virtue. Now, as I said, it's interesting to know who it was and important to find out who it is. But it is just as important to know what the motive was. And this, I think, is the significance of what Alito is saying. What he's saying is, listen, there were people who implied that this leak was coming from the right. And Nina Totenberg, the legal propagandist, I think I would have to say for NPR, she wrote an article basically saying, quote, the only theory that makes sense is that a conservative leaked the opinion. Now, think about how, first of all, I mean, Nina Totenberg may not be the brightest bulb in the legal field, but how can that be the only theory that makes sense? Who is more likely to leak an opinion? The people who affirm the opinion and want Roe to be overturned? Why would they want that? Why would they want that to be leaked? To maybe have some early outrage about it that is then what? So it's not quite as much of a shock when the decision itself comes out. No, it makes far more sense to say that somebody on the other side, on the left, leaked it because what they wanted to do is create a sort of a cascade or an escalating wave of indignation and outrage that would then scare the justices into, oh my gosh, there's going to be social upheaval if this decision is released, and so we better at the very least tone it down, or maybe even rethink if we want to go this far and really overturn Roe versus Wade. So this appears to have been the motive, and here's Alito saying, based on what I know. Let's think about it. Alito is being briefed, obviously, about the status of the investigation. He is actually the justice most directly involved because it was his opinion that was leaked. And what he's saying is, no, the leak did not come from the conservative side. The suspected leaker, or maybe leakers, were on the left. And that in itself is, I think, information that confirms what so many of us had already suspected.